everyone, my name is Kim Moffitt and I'm the founder and executive director of a nonprofit called We're the People. Our overall goal is to increase voter turnout through various programming, including this video right here. We're not here to tell you how to vote or advocate for one candidate or party over another. Instead, we're just here to get you registered, help you figure out when and where you're voting, and of course, make sure you understand how the whole thing works. And that all starts here with our first video. What is a caucus? Honestly, the caucus is one of those things that sounds like it might be really confusing, but once you know it, you know it. It's not as complicated as people want to make it seem. First thing to know is that they run different depending on your political preference. The Republican caucus is a little more straightforward and actually isn't all that different than primary voting. First, there's a call to order, and the caucus chair and secretary are elected. Then, representatives from the presidential candidates make their case. After that, caucus goers vote by paper ballot. Now, sometimes in a smaller caucus, they might do a show of hands, but typically it's a private vote on paper. And we'll go into this a little more when we talk about the Democrats' process, but Republicans don't have to meet any type of viability threshold. So, if a candidate gets 1% of the vote, they're still in the game. And the name of the game? Delegates, aka convention representatives, which are assigned based on the percentage that each candidate gets at all the caucuses. So that's it. No hard math, no viability minimum. It's all pretty straightforward. Then we've got the Democrats' process, and that's where things get a little more confusing. So here's how it works. Caucus goers head to their precinct, like a school gym or church or wherever it may be, and after representatives from all their candidates make their case, caucus goers go stand with the group that supports their candidate. The very cool thing about this process is not only is there a space for all the different candidates, but there's also an undecided area. So unlike voting by paper ballot, you can actually show up not being totally sure who you're voting for. So that's round one, after which each group gets counted. Each candidate needs to get at least 15% of the caucus goers, or they're not considered viable. Remember when I very cool and casually mentioned that Republicans don't have a viability minimum? That's because Democrats do. Each candidate needs to get at least 15% of support from the caucus goers, or they're not considered viable. Now here's where things get fun. Fun? Interesting. I was trying to figure out the best way to visualize this without using different candidates because, one, we're nonpartisan, and more importantly, I don't want to age out this video by showing 2020 candidates. I want to keep using it. So instead, I'm going to use these little minifigures right here because for various reasons, I am a grown adult who has a lot of them. So we're through round one, and this group over here doesn't quite meet the viability minimum. They have a couple of options. They can go support a different candidate, they can move into the undecideds, or if they're right on the edge of viability, or they're just feeling kind of wild, they can actually go and pull support from other non-viable candidates in hopes of bringing their group up to 15%. Now, I say non-viable because once you're grouped up with a candidate that's already viable, you can't move around. You're going to sit with that candidate in the next round of counting. The other thing they can do is sit the next round out, which, why? Look how much fun everyone's having. After everyone's settled into their new groups, there's another count. The viable groups there win the delegates. Similar to Republicans, the more people standing in your corner, the more delegates you get. Then, the state adds up the number of delegates that each candidate got at each caucus, and the candidate with the most delegates essentially wins the state. Boom! Caucused. I say essentially because it's actually the state convention where it gets decided which delegates will go on to the national convention, but there's usually a clear winner before the state convention, so in service of not breaking our brains, let's just agree that the person with the most delegates at the end of the caucus wins the state, and we'll meet right back here if something changes. Anyway, the point is, boom, caucused. This year, there will also be satellite caucuses that work in the same way, but help open it up to people that can't get there because of work. They only happen in the evenings. Accessibility, family obligations, and anything else. Now, yes, obviously, there's some nuance and a lot of rules I'm just summing up here, but here's the big secret about politics. There are a lot of really boring, tiny little rules that might have actually just been invented to confuse us, to make us think that the whole system is too complicated to take part in. You do not need to know every single tiny sub-clause of Appendix Q from document number DS28B to understand what's happening. And not just understand it, but genuinely care about it. Get really excited about it. And how do I know? Because you just sat through this entire video and now you basically understand what a caucus is. I do want to point out that one of the problems that people have with the caucus is it's not very inclusive. As although there are satellite caucuses, it still doesn't mean it's open to everyone. There's no like early caucusing. You can't caucus by mail. You actually have to show up to be able to participate, and that on its own is a barrier for people. Not to mention the demographics of a state like Iowa don't exactly mirror the demographics of the country, But because Iowa goes first, it gives a boost to campaigns that do well. So Iowa sort of sets the tone for the rest of the caucuses and primaries, but that comes from a state that, again, demographically, looks different than many other states that haven't gone yet. So is a caucus the best way to do this? I don't know. Honestly, maybe not. But look, there are a lot of things that we wish we could fix about the system. But until that happens, we're going to dance with the democracy we got. That means showing up where we can, doing the work in the spaces that we can't, and paying attention to everything in between. Regardless of whether there are better ways to make your voice heard in the primary, the spirit of the caucus is found in the pride and excitement of people showing up to shape the future of our country. And it is very exciting. So there you go. Now you know everything about a caucus. If you like this video, please don't forget to subscribe. We'll be putting these out every couple weeks, or more often if needed, because let's be honest, politics is confusing. But being confused doesn't mean we can ignore it, because ignoring it doesn't make it go away. So we're going to work together, break all this down, make you into the strongest, smartest, most prepared, habitual voter out there, like a voting superhero whose origin story is nuanced and powers are exciting and the movie just never gets it quite right. But maybe that's a video for another week. Thanks for watching. We're here to help.